We got the application in. Yeah.
Is it good, Sam?
So could they have and record. Could they have a special meeting just of the beer board to address this?
If everyone is ready, we'll call
that's
to
not a
order the
regular
meeting of
meeting.
the Signal Mountain Town Council.
That's
It's
not a
Monday,
regular
August
meeting.
12, 2019. We will stand, and is Stacy here? We'll stand and have the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Carol, roll call, please.
Here.
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 Here. We have no minutes to approve tonight, so we'll move on past that. And before we, citizens' opportunity to address councils now, but before that, I just want to say, because it's off the cuff also, the ceremony in here that Sam put together for Charles Coolidge was incredible. And it was so great to see standing room only to honor one of Signal Mountain's greatest. If you haven't had a chance, take a look at the monument that's just past the poster sign on your way down on the left. All right, if you would like to speak, come to the microphone and state your name and address.
Kent Walker, 901 Kentucky Avenue, Signal Mountain, Tennessee. Having heard that the Lyons Orchids property has passed the Planning Commission's approval, I can foresee a potential for the town of Signal Mountain to lose some businesses that we currently have to that development. Just something to consider.
Thanks, Kent.
He was much taller. Elizabeth Baker, 1 Carriage Hill. I'd like to start this evening by reading page 5 under other business of the council minutes
What
from
date?
January 25th. Mayor Landrum said the council packet had not been placed on the website for today's meeting. Mr. Veal explained that it was a new procedure and it was just an oversight that would be corrected. Mayor Landrum asked that in addition to placing the packet on the website, that paper copies would be available at the meeting. And today they were, and I appreciate that, and they've been for many, probably since this meeting. And I do appreciate that. But as a citizen that is very civically involved, I had a question when the agenda came out, and I thought it would be a quick trip to the town website to just take a peek at the package, get my question answered, no big deal. There was no package there. There was nothing but a draft agenda. And so my question basically is how long does it take for this type of procedure to become regular, something that we can depend on? Thank you.
Thanks.
Claire Greisinger, 40 Carriage Hill. I drove down James Boulevard yesterday for the first time in quite a while, and I would like to say that I hope that that project is not finished. I assume that's concrete smeared over those rails. So is that the final look that the town's going to be left with? Do you know if that project is done?
Well, it's on the agenda for tonight, but I think we'll have an update on that in a minute. Yeah.
And one other thing, I wanted to ask the council if they would add to the council minutes when they're on the town website, any documents or charts or reports or whatever that are referred to in the minutes as copy attached. There's no copy of anything. And I have asked in the past, for quite a while off and on, if copies referred to in the official minutes would be included in those minutes. The last time I was asked, I was told to fill out a open record request with Sam for those records that fall under copy attached. So is there a reason that information can't be included in those minutes? I mean, if there is, I won't ask anymore. I'll just fill out that record request because I know how to do that.
What's an example of the kind of thing?
I think there was something on there, the fire department had something that they had, a project, or I don't know whether it was an award, but it was something positive from the fire department out. I think there was something on there on the budget, during the budget, there was a budget thing on there. There was something on there about the sanitation fee versus tax increase kind of thing. There are 5 or 6 things that have been on there. But, I mean, this has been over the past couple of years. Once in a while I would say, you know, could you put that on there or whatever, but I don't know why it's not on there.
Yeah, well,
it's part of the meeting.
I think I know what part of the reason is, and I think I know what the solution is, because we met with staff a while back and talking about what's going to happen on the new website when the new stuff is done. And now it's often a versioning issue, like which version gets placed there. And
Well, right now there isn't any version there.
now there isn't any version placed there. But I think when we establish the new website, we can have versions, and then anything that becomes part of the council packet, if it appears somewhere else on the town's website, can't, for instance, like if it's a commendation or something, it can be linked as a document that was part of that meeting. Do you recall I was talking about a setup for doing that, Boyd? And we haven't transited to the new website yet, and I think that'll probably happen in the next month or two.
So things that are, say, copy attached, do I have to fill out those record requests?
That'd be a staff question.
I would just suggest if you're requesting minutes, just to include with that and all referenced attachments. When you request the minutes, then
Oh, I don't want the minutes, because I can read the minutes that are on the website, or, you know, I can read them. It'll talk about something, then it'll say copy attached.
right. So if you're asking for something that's not on the website, now we'll try to resolve that. But in the meantime, if you could do that, that would.
Fill out a
Yeah.
record request for that.
We'll try to resolve that right away. Some of these, it's not something I've checked every day or anything like that, so I'll have to go back and look and see if there was a drop on when something was supposed to be added in there, and we'll try to resolve it
It's
as
just been
quickly as we
years,
can.
and I've
like I
asked, you
said, I
know,
don't-
off and on, over and over, and it'll say blah, 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 the council did this, the council did that, see attachment, or see copy attached, and there's nothing, and, you know, then I have to fill out now an open record request to see what seems to me ought to be on the website when they list those minutes, and you look on there. I'm sure
Understood.
Sam would appreciate that.
Yeah, well, and I agree it ought to be that way as well. That's one of the reasons the change in the website needs to happen.
Bob Greisinger, 40 Carriage Hill, Signal Mountain, Tennessee. I am a infrequent person that comes here, but I'll come here multiple times a year. One of the things that surprised me is we just opened this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. That's kind of one of these things that we're stating, that's the rules that we operate under. Then the next thing, we used to open meetings with the prayer, kind of like that's the rules we operate on. We're a Judeo-Christian, or we can be a Muslim or whatever, but a prayer to God. We don't do that anymore. We have a moment of silence. What is silence? Nothing. We don't stand for nothing. And that's what you're telling everybody is, we believe in the Constitution. We don't really believe in anything else. Think about it. You removed it sometime in the past.
No. There hasn't been anyone who's wanted to do it. And you're invited to do it next time if you want.
You can't find anybody to do it. Let me talk to some ministers and then see if we
Absolutely.
can find somebody.
That's absolutely fine.
Super. Thank you.
Yeah.
Denver Road, 907 Cherokee Lane. First of all, let's congratulate Cheryl. She's a well-established Signal Mountaineer. My wife asked me to do this. We've gone billing once a month for the water. Is there a strong rationale behind that? I mean, I appreciate it. I'm a retired post office here giving me money. But did you get some kind of, what is the idea behind that?
But yeah, there's two very simple ones. One is you find leaks more quickly, not just for the homeowners, but for the town as well. If there's a leak in the system, it gets discovered quickly. Second is, if you are the homeowner who's had a leak, you don't wait 2 or 3 months in order to get a bill that can be astronomical. And so it gets
Okay.
rid of loss.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're sending out.
And also, it allows for monthly auto withdrawals on a.
Okay, so you're actually sending out every month somebody to read the meters as opposed to every 3 months.
Until the automated meters get placed. And there will be automated meters that get placed. And that's been part of the design for years. I think even some were bought, I don't know, how many years ago?
I'm sorry.
Automated meters have been discussed for,
Cheryl mentioned when she was a commissioner,
Over 30 years ago, we started talking about it.
yeah.
Yeah,
So this is just the,
still waiting.
yeah, this is just the plan working itself out.
Okay, once again, thanks for the money. That's for the post office, I appreciate you. Well, I had 3 things, but as usual, I forgot one of them. I'm one of those that can go into a grocery store with 3 items and forget 2 of them. But I'll think of it.
Well, you have 1 of your minutes left of the 3, so.
It won't come to
All
me.
right. Thanks, Dan.
I'm Bob Sikorsky, 104 South Drive.
Lift that
And,
mic, Bob.
I'm sorry.
So you put it over here.
My wife and I were under the assumption, I believe it was June, that a resolution was passed by the town council forbidding short-term rentals on bed and breakfasts on Signal. And we have a property next door to us at 106 South Drive, which has continued to be rented on such and is still available on their website now. And we were just wondering if there was a reason that there hasn't been some sort of, procedure put into place to prohibit this, because these people are, it's been going on for years, and we were so glad to see that it finally was being looked at, and now that that was passed, we thought that would come to an end, and it's continuing.
Yeah, Bob, it didn't prohibit, it regulated it. The state doesn't allow a town to prohibit. Correct me
Right.
if I'm wrong, attorney.
That's right, correct.
So it regulates it, and the regulations are on the town's website, if you want to look at those.
Okay.
If there's someone that's in violation, I'm not sure how does that get handled?
oh, one of the things we're working on now is, one of the provisions of the law is that if someone was operating otherwise in compliance with the law and that they were remitting hotel motel taxes and things like that, then they're grandfathered in. So right now, we're in the process of identifying all the ones that have been operating and establishing that information so that in a organized manner, we can send out notices to all of those and have the same cycle of obtaining information and all of that. So we're trying to nail down who all has been operating, if they have been providing the taxes to the state as necessary, do they qualify for being grandfathered in, so that the biggest issue on that will be whether or not they're required to be owner occupied. So with it
Right.
being relatively new and just coming out of the budget process, we're really just getting to trying to nail all that down and determine what we have, who's operating, have they been complying with the state aspects of the law, who's going to be grandfathered and who's not. And so we are in the process of that.
Yeah, this property is not owner occupied. She has not been on the property for years. And, you know, I don't see how she could have been grandfathered in, but I don't understand, you know, legalities on such. But we just thought that this would be something that would be basically, it looked to us like it was going to be long-term situation for these bed and breakfasts and not these short-term, and these people are staying 2 or 3 nights at a time, and then they're turning it over, and it's basically like living next to a motel.
Well, there's even, we have a compliance officer, that's part of that, so he needs to officially let you know, right? And then,
Right, the building and codes folks will primarily be the ones involved in doing that, and they're the ones we have getting the information on who we need to send notice to and request information from.
okay, but if there was a problem, we also, the ordinance changed so that fines can be
Yes.
let through Charlie.
The administrative hearing officer ordinance changed so that he could hear matters regarding zoning. So that does allow him to hear these ordinances, which would be the difference between theoretically a $50 fine and a $500 fine. So we've also put things into place that would give us a little more teeth in dealing with them. We just have to establish what the current situation is with some of these and determine whether or not they're grandfathered before we can even consider taking any type of action.
I see. So is this something that the city is going to just proceed to investigate all of these
Oh, yes.
people that are
Yes.
in this process? Okay. Well, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thank you, appreciate it. Anyone else? All right, we'll move on. Next, we have the presentation of the MAC strategic plan. And I wrote Becky, and I found out that town manager had also talked to Becky. She isn't here to make a dramatic presentation of any
No.
kind.
I can if you want, but
She could, she's qualified.
Becky Pope, 1910 Hollister Road. Well, our MAC board has been working diligently over the past few months to redo our old strategic plan. It was last done in 2014, so it was time to do that. And I think we've come up with a good one. I sent it to all of you and hope you've had a chance to look over it. I had emailed just the new document. There should be copies of the
The old
2014 one there, which has the 2012 goals in it and supplementary information. But I hope you've had a chance to look at that. I can go into great detail and tell you all about it, but assuming that you've had a chance to look at it, I just would like to come to you now to respectfully submit my proposal, or our proposal, for the new strategic plan for the MAC for your approval. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
And this is exactly what we wanted to start having happen from all of our boards if possible, so that we know what's going on and we're aware. I know Susanna, you're the liaison, and you were
Yes.
involved in some of the talk with this.
Yeah. I think it's a really great comprehensive plan. It sort of looks at all the primary vision of where we are with the MAC, and I think what the intended growth, and tries to address some of those things, and
And where we
with all
want
the-
to be.
Huh?
And where we want to be.
Where we'd like to be.
Where we'd like to go.
And with the improvements that have been made with the theater that are in progress and almost complete. they're really going to be able to open the doors and hopefully broaden their reach with people since it got sort of short-circuited a little while ago. So
Yeah.
How
this
would,
is going to address
I'm sorry.
some of their challenges.
How do you intend to monitor? And this, I'm not trying to pin you to anything. I think
Mm-hmm.
this is just a good question for all of our committees as, we start to find out. What's the process? You don't have to have one, but have you guys talked about a process of how are we doing on what we said we were going to do? Some of the, and I'm asking that only because some of the things that are in here were in the one before and in the one before.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, I know that at our very next meeting, we have on our agenda, or we will have on our agenda, to talk about the first goal, which is creating a facilities committee. And I think by that structure, just going from there to go through each point and try to stay on top of it more. We haven't talked about a direct procedure for, when we're going to do each thing. We can address that at future meetings, but I think a lot of it depends on, so much of what we do these days depends on when the theater's going to be open, when we can have a full building again, and I think we're all very antsy to jump off from that point. So I think once we get there, it'll be a lot easier to plan how we're going to go through each point. So does that answer you?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for me? No? Okay.
So it would be great if this could go on the website.
Yes.
As long as the council, how does the council, do we accept it as a strategic plan?
I would recommend, if council wants to move forward, that we do a resolution for the next meeting, formally adopting or accepting it.
Good idea.
And in the meantime, we can have it on the website for review, and if you guys get any feedback, you can consider that before that resolution.
I like that.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Becky.
Thank you.
All right, we have a slew of resolutions.
We have, ahead of that, on the revised agenda,
Oh, the revised agenda is the beer permit
yes.
application? Okay.
And Harry and I have had some discussion on that. As I told you, we made that revision in an effort to see if we could move forward with this. And I'll let Harry.
Here's what our code provides with respect to issuance of a beer permit. Under Title 8, Chapter 2, Section 245 provides, the town council shall issue no permit under this division until the application therefore has been approved following a public hearing at a regularly scheduled council meeting with reasonable notice. And as I understand the way this one has come forward, the notice of this application came up or appeared, I guess, with the revised draft of the agenda this afternoon.
This morning.
Or this morning.
Right.
I would question whether that's reasonable notice for a public hearing. At this regularly scheduled town council meeting.
Well,
Sorry, question?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't know that the council can approve a beer permit, this beer permit tonight.
My question immediately was a special meeting, but then it
It's not
actually
regularly scheduled.
stipulates a regular meeting.
At a regularly scheduled council meeting.
The event, what is the date of the event? What is the date of our next council meeting?
24th is a Saturday. It's the following Monday, I'd say.
26? So that everybody's aware of what this is, and that's why I'm hesitant to even speak about it and to try to influence it in any way, because it's awkward for me to do so. But our charter allows alcohol at events at the MAC.
Our
Our
code.
code allows alcohol, and our beer code does. And we specifically mentioned that. But whoever wants to serve alcohol, has to get a permit just like everybody else. It's $250 so that they can do a background check. What makes this one awkward is this is the Signal Mountain Elementary Preservation Fund. She's involved with it.
No, I'm not. I resigned.
Did you quit?
I had to.
Oh, okay. So Cheryl
I'm
quit.
still scraping paint,
But
but I'm not on the board anymore.
Angie and I are still married, though.
Yeah, I know.
So that makes it awkward as well, for me. So I would rather someone else lead this if there's a way out.
Would it be-
Can I just throw something in? And it's on the agenda later for discussion, but there are circumstances, and this is one where this doesn't really fit into the mold of what was meant to be addressed by these codes. It really is talking about someone who's operating an establishment, or selling beer, or serving it in conjunction with a business, but the provision that does allow it at the MAC says that an applicant may obtain a temporary permit for the sale of beer or other beverage of like alcoholic content for consumption within the premises of the Mountain Arts Community Center after consideration of an application and issuance of a permit by the town council pursuant to 8/240. So it basically makes them play by the same rules, which I don't know that was really the intent, but that's what we're left to try to deal with. And when this came up, and I will let Dan off the hook because it was me who said, well, let's at least get it on the agenda and have the discussion and see if it's reasonable to move forward with it. If the council was willing to approve it, subject to us completing all of the other things that we always do. We always do the background check and all that. It's not that we wouldn't do those things, that because of the timing, if council was willing to approve it, subject to a satisfactory background check and so forth, then maybe we could move forward with that. And then later, we find that a few pages away that says, well, you can't do that unless you have this public hearing. So it was me who was trying to figure out a way we could do this, but do it right.
Yeah, but it's Harry's fault because he forgot to put the beer in the refrigerator.
And one of the other things is, this says the town council shall issue no permit under this division. We have this in like 3 different places. Something is referred to as an article, and we don't have an article. We have a title and we have chapters. Part of it refers to articles and part of it refers to divisions. So it was obviously kind of cobbled together from other things. And again, later in the meeting, that's kind of some of the stuff we need to talk about fixing. But at the same time, at this point, I think it serves as an explanation why we're struggling with how to address this.
Does the MAC, so anytime the MAC hosts an event of this description, they file an application, like a separate application for each event? That's what's been done. So I'm looking more long-term, but is there a way that we could, after this, with the appropriate amount of time and transparency, because they seem to be we're hosting more events up there where they provide alcohol, so that they don't have to come back every time. Like a permit that's good for 6 months or something, and then.
Well, the thing is, it's not the MAC that's producing an event. In this case, It's the
the
Signal Mountain,
preservation
it's the
fund.
preservation fund, or it could be you if you wanted to have a birthday party and have alcohol at the birthday party. You can do it at the MAC based on our code, but you'd have to come and get a permit and have a bartender.
You're right.
And so,
And so like for the sing-along on the 24th,
right.
there will be a bartender, and the money that you pay to go to attend the event.
Covers it.
Covers all of it.
But there may not be a way to have the event on the 24th.
The timing of the application.
It doesn't sound like we could even have a special meeting.
No.
Yeah,
Just be
it pretty
regular.
specifically says regularly scheduled meeting.
Who's on tap for October, so to speak?
Tap.
Or not, in this case. Who do we have on October? Anybody yet? Okay. And that's firm?
But it was a matter of whether or not Noel was available
Yeah.
to do the piano sing-along. What, the idea behind this event, and I'm trying not to do what I'm about to do, was just to have like a,
Please, something.
like a public, like a pub sing, you know, just somebody playing piano with everybody singing songs. It's not a big drunk. It's just a good time. But it sounds like we can't do it.
May have to do that another time.
All right. No.
But what about my suggestion, though? So could they get a permit that would sort of cover them for, you know,
Well,
by the
that was one
quarter
of
or
the things that I suggested in this. If you get a temporary permit, it says that let me find it again.
242. So.
Yeah. After consideration of an application and issuance of a permit by the town council pursuant to 8240 of the Signal Mountain Town Code. So when you go to that, that's what lays out the cost, everything that has to be done. So basically, it says that a temporary permit costs the same thing as a regular permit. And in this instance, it would make no sense to get a temporary permit because they do expect to do other events. So you could get one for a calendar year for the same cost, but 8242 specifically says that you can get a temporary permit.
And temporary permits are no longer than 30 days.
So
what are they?
What?
They're no longer 30 days?
No
They
longer
can
than.
be no
No
longer
longer
than
than
30 days.
So it sounds like what we need to do, I've been, for council watchers also, for the past 2.5 years, I've been keeping notes of places in our code that just don't make sense. And we have a bunch of these that need to be addressed. And this is one that we could jump on pretty quickly to try to make it easier, correct?
Yes, I think
Yeah.
it would help.
Yes.
Can we do that at the next council meeting? But that would,
Yes.
but that might not help for October because that would
Correct.
require an ordinance change, which is 2
Right.
readings, right?
Right, and we need to know what to draft, and that would be, and maybe we cover that later in the
Right.
discussion, but, yes, theoretically, we could have first reading in last meeting of this month, and then first meeting of September.
You guys willing to try for
Again,
that?
theoretically.
And then, before you make a decision about what you guys are going to do going forward. I'm going to get in trouble when I go home.
Again, the effort.
Blame me.
The effort was.
I already did.
At least get it on here and see if there was a way, again, if we could do it and do it right, at least it's on the agenda and we can try to move forward. But as we've worked through it today, it just appeared more and more problematic, and that's the last thing we want for any of the parties involved.
Carolyn's question. We actually
No.
never convened the beer board. I mean, Harry, I shouldn't have spoken.
No, I think that's right. The application's not being considered.
Yeah, it was never taken up.
Now we move on to resolutions. The first is a resolution authorizing the town manager to execute an updated memorandum of understanding with the State of Tennessee Group Insurance Program for the local government agency insurance 2020 plan year. And if you guys have looked at this, it's a lot of regulations, which basically ends up being signed by our, who signs this for us?
Our agency benefit coordinator, who is Trish Davis, she's administrative assistant for the fire and police, also serves this role. She handles all of she's the liaison with the state, our employees and myself, and then I will sign it, and Carol is the finance officer. And this is it's a memorandum of agreement or understanding. This isn't the contract. We have a standing contract with the state to participate in their insurance plan, which has been one of the best things we've done. We just got notice that the 2020 renewal will not have any increase in premiums on it. And we went for years with major increases every year, and that's what led us to this, and it has been extremely stable and absolutely stable this coming year. So this is just an update that has changes in definitions if a provision is removed. There used to be requirements for doing wellness things that they've removed, so that comes out. So this is just an update with those types of things in it.
And looking at, for the most part, it's telling what we have to do to remain in compliance with their program,
Right.
as opposed to what the program.
And it does outline their obligations as
Right.
well.
Motion to approve?
So moved.
Seconded by Bill. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 4-0. Next, we have a resolution authorizing the town manager to purchase one 2020 Ford Police Interceptor, Tennessee State Contract Number 56446, from Ford of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, for a total amount not to exceed $33,845. $33,845 to be used by the police department for the town of Signal Mountain. And I assume that this is on the vehicle replacement plan?
Yes, this is a vehicle replacement fund. I will point out that this vehicle is more expensive than ones we have in the past. By necessity, Ford has done away with the sedan version of their police vehicle. So and you've, I'm sure, seen Chattanooga, the county, all other agencies. If you want a Ford police vehicle, you're going to get the utility vehicle, and that's what this is. Even with that, this is slightly over what we have budgeted for this vehicle in vehicle replacement, but vehicle replacement has a budget for a number of vehicles, and anticipate that ultimately we'll probably be fine on that budget. But that's why this one is a little higher than normal and just a hair over what we have budgeted for this vehicle.
How much is a hair?
$800.
Oh.
About $800. We have let me change it. 845. We have 33 even budgeted.
Okay.
Do we have a motion? So moved.
Second.
Discussion? We have several of these items that I told Boyd when I talked to him today, it looks like everybody's just waiting for the new budget year to begin and then purchase all the things that are there, so it's a heavy spend.
Oh, no, we've got plenty more to come.
I bet. All right, any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Carries 4-0. Next, we have a resolution appointing Andrew Hodgson as a member of the Town of Signal Mountain's Tree Board. And I talked with Ann Haygood, and This was someone that Ann had suggested to Joe, and Joe said, thought it was good, and so they recommend, the tree board recommends that we approve this person. So I move for approval.
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, I corresponded with Joe yesterday, actually, and he just wanted to add his regrets that he couldn't be here due to travel, because he certainly welcomes Mr. Hodge.
That's a good sign. You ready to vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 4-0. Next, we have a resolution authorizing the town manager to submit an application for the TML Risk Management Pool Safety Partners Loss Controls Matching Grant Program, which shall be awarded in August of 2019. Boyd, if you want to explain.
This is a program we participate in each year. It doesn't require us to buy any more or less than we do anyway. We just track certain items that qualify, boots for workers, body armor, a variety of things that we purchase anyway, and we can get a portion of that returned up to, in our case, it's probably a couple $1,000s, but it's simply a matter of participating and providing the receipts and stuff for reimbursement. So it's a very good program.
For motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any other discussion? Anybody against free money that actually is free?
I like free money.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 4-0. Next, we have a resolution authorizing the town manager to enter into an agreement with the Humane Educational Society for the Control of Animals for a period beginning July 1st, 2019 through June 30, 2020 for $825 monthly. So I talked with Boyd a bit about this one earlier today just to get some history on it, and it used to cost us in the neighborhood of about 30,000. How much was it?
It was going up to around 38, if I'm not mistaken.
And when did it change?
It's when I was police chief. We negotiated this to. Previously, they basically had an all or nothing policy. Either you contracted with them and they provided the level of service they thought you needed, or you didn't. And with a new director, and we have a very unique situation where we're willing to do things that most places won't, like hang on to the dogs for a few days and try to find the owners, and we deal with almost all of the calls unless the dog's vicious or something like that. So we handle the majority of it, and once we walk through that and explain the difference, and they understood that most places won't do that, we do that, and we came to this agreement. So we went from, I think, close to 38,000 to under 10,000 a year, and it's worked well.
Move to approve.
Second.
So this is another one of those places where I read our animal ordinance just to look through it, and we need to update this one as well, because it makes references to the old system that we had with the Humane Society, and some of it is a little confusing. It just needs to be updated, and we got a lot of work. We're gonna have to just power through all of this stuff. Start, I think, putting them on the agenda. If you read through it, you could mistakenly think that in order to pick up a dog from over here, you might have to pay money, but you don't from us. But if the Humane Society takes the animal, you do from them. And the Humane Society, there's some verbiage in there that the Humane Society, if the dog hasn't had its shots, can go ahead and do that and charge you, but that's not us.
Right. And it's not that we're opposed to having a fee, but when the change was made, there was never action taken by council to establish a fee, and we can't set one unilaterally. It has to be an action of council. So if we were to do that, that would need to be included as well.
Right.
So without that, as it stands right now, we don't charge a fee. But again, understanding that we went from 38,000 to 10,000, at the time, we were satisfied with that.
Yeah. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 4-0. Next, we have a resolution authorizing the town manager to enter into an agreement with Axon Enterprise, Inc. for X26 tasers, including accessories. You need to accessorize your tasers. Service and support for a period of 500 years for the total amount.
500 years?
5 years.
Thank you.
For the total amount of $29,125 to be paid in annual installments not to exceed $6,000 annually.
This, in the past, we have purchased tasers for officers, and the ones that we currently have are coming to end of life, and we would need to start replacing those. They have a program for not only providing the tasers, but all the training cartridges, any cartridges used during the duty, they replace those. You have service and support. Ultimately, the chief looked at this and other staff, and when you spread it out over time, it's actually more cost effective to enter this program. Even though it is less than $10,000 a year, since we are committing to a longer term, and it is overall in excess of $10,000, opted to bring it to council for approval, just to cover the basis on our purchasing guidelines.
More cost effective than what?
Then spending a much larger quantity of money
With a grant?
on the front end
Okay.
to purchase them. Now, as it stands now, this first year, we will be able to fund that out of the drug fund and not use any tax dollars on that. Each year, we can look and see if that's a possibility. If we went out now and bought tasers to replace the ones that are out of date, the drug fund wouldn't support that. So we would look at, that would be a capital purchase out of general fund. So it would be more problematic that way. Ultimately, it could actually be less in the long run. There's no way of knowing that for sure. But doing it this way is cost effective in that we can use funds other than drug fund, and they think that it may ultimately actually prove to be a little cheaper. Is that accurate, Chief?
Yes. Motion to approve, I make it.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Carries 4-0. Next, we have a resolution authorizing the town manager to purchase portable digital radios and accessories, Tennessee State Contract Number 21424 from Motorola Solutions, Inc., for the amount of $35,809.34 to be used by the fire department for the town of Signal Mountain.
You skipped one.
Did I?
Mm-hmm.
And we have Thomas Brothers.
Thomas Brothers
The
Construction.
one we're going to,
Well, can we do that next?
Oh, yeah.
Let's do that next. We
Carol
just
will
read
let you
this
do
one.
it.
this is a purchase that is part of a replacement for radios in the fire department. Much like the tasers, they are becoming obsolete and will no longer be supported in the coming year or so. We have already purchased some, and the last group that we purchased we were able to get a grant for. So in phasing it like this really created an opportunity to look for grants to pay for portions of it, at least as we went along. And last year we were able to get that. So this is the remaining portion of the radios to be replaced. It is a budgeted capital item, and it is under budget.
Motion to approve.
Is that a question or a statement?
It's a question.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I went up at the end.
I'll second.
Discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 4-0. Now we look at a resolution authorizing additional funds for the contract. No, wait a second.
No, we want to,
Are we doing it?
no.
We're not. Okay, so
No,
I'm not
we
going
just-
to
we
read
just-
this one.
you're- Yeah,
Yeah.
just an explanation of request to postpone that until the next meeting. Would you like me to do that, or would you like to do that?
You know, I'll do it, but I'll probably go too long. If I ride my bicycle or I walk down James Boulevard and I run into a citizen, I either duck behind a tree or I hear a complaint about the quality of the James Boulevard project. It's bumpy, I ride my bike on it, and I'm happy when I get off of it and onto smooth roads. So I went out today and took some photographs, and in the course of 5 feet, there's like a 7/8 inch dip, and looked at some standards. Jamie Blanton gave me some standards from, other road projects, not ours specifically, and I know we're looking into that. And I have some questions, I have concerns about the smoothness of that project, and they're hitting us for some more money, which looks to be legit, what they're asking for. But in the meantime, this is our chance to say, we aren't satisfied, and there's concrete on the tracks that wasn't cleaned off, and it looks like some of the edging wasn't done, and they've had to caulk in some places. So you want me to stop? I made video and I took pictures and I sent them.
And some of this was already being addressed with the engineer specifically that we needed some resolution on. The issue with the bumpiness was one that you brought up, so we sent that to him as well. And the standard that Jamie provided, the engineer said, this is generally not applicable to low-speed residential roads, but you guys need a good answer to this, and I'd rather spend some time in researching to make sure where we need to be ahead of dealing with all this, and so we'll push this resolution to the next meeting, at which time we will have some information on, not only, he was coming anyway. I basically said, you've got to come explain this overage, but at the same time, be able to address these concerns and speak to them before we take any action on anything, which seemed to be the advisable course of action.
So that's why we're not doing that one.
Good.
All right.
That is
Good idea,
a good
yeah.
table or postpone to the next meeting, either would, I think, would suffice.
So
in
I don't
this
have a
case.
resolution number, but I've moved to table whatever resolution number this is. A move?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Carries, the tabling carries 4-0. Now we move to ordinances. Did I get everything, guys? Did.
Yes.
We have one ordinance. It's an ordinance to amend number 2019-13 entitled Fiscal Year 2019-2020 Budget Ordinance to provide for certain additional revenues and expenditures in this budget year. And Boyd will correct me if my understanding's wrong, but these are things that were started in the year that moved to the next year. It's what we do all the time, that to move them into the next year. Plus, there are some donations that are in here, and anything that comes in like that. For instance, the donations are being accepted now for a roof for the kennel. Those things have to come in and go out, and so that's what all of this is.
Correct. There is one, I will point out, we did address the requested additional funds for James Boulevard, so that, should that move forward, that's taken care of as well.
Do we need to amend this then?
No, it's in there. Putting it in, whether we use it or not, is not a problem.
Okay.
Not having it in there if we need to use it would be the problem. So
In no way does this obligate us
No.
to it.
nope. This is simply an appropriation, not an approval for expenditure.
All right, so this will be first reading of this ordinance? This
Correct.
requires two, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Does it?
public hearing?
And a public hearing next time? Okay. So I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Carries 4-0.
I do want to clarify one thing, because as you guys were voting, I'm rethinking what you said. You said that projects that had been started, and that may not necessarily be the case. They are projects from prior year. Some of them are in process, others weren't undertaken, but
They were
when
still
we have
budgeted.
those, we project expending all of those funds last year when we did this year's budget. That way, if we don't get it done, we simply move the funds, move the expenditure, and it doesn't have a negative impact on this
Not
year's
to be
budget.
pedantic, but the approval of it as a budget item being a start, they've been started and that they've been approved as a
Right,
budget item.
right. They are,
I said not to be pedantic, and then I used the word pedantic, and I was pedantic,
Yeah.
so.
so I just, like to be clear.
All right, discussion, design review process. Should I start that?
Please.
So the reason, this is part of what we said we want to do. I'm going all the way back to what Dick G. has said over and over again, is we need some design standards in our town. And in watching, excuse me, the whole process, and reading through the DRC, let me pull up my notes here on it. The design review standards, our design standards, as well as our charter and its establishment of the design review committee, they need more specifics so that they can say, these are the colors, and you're within this color palette, and they don't have that. We need to get that to them. I think, and Ed's here if you want to, you're the head of the DRC, and Claire's also on the DRC. Is there anybody else? You're on the DRC. So you guys.
Is Cheryl still on since she's now a council member?
We haven't gotten to that part of the meeting yet. Yeah, but I guess at this moment she is.
At this moment, I am.
Yeah. Seems like that a suggestion. It's another one of those things, we've heard it talked around for years and years, that we need to have a color palette. That color palette needs to come from the DRC, probably. Right? Not from the council to the DRC. Do you want to come up and talk about that? Have you guys discussed that? Name and address, please.
Ed Garby, 502 Signal Mountain Boulevard, and I'm the chair of the DRC. We have had that discussion in the past. We don't really want to limit someone's creativity to put colors, on their buildings, although I think the DRC is sympathetic to, or the members are sympathetic to, a range of colors. We don't want to see hot pink on something.
Right, and the attorney would be the person Harry would be the person to tell me if I'm wrong, but I've read through those. I don't think you can tell them what color unless it's a color that you could make an argument that it's a bad color as far as how it fits with our residential neighborhood. So if somebody wants a brown, I don't think you can tell them a light brown or a dark brown as it stands. I think we may be telling people to do things we can't because we don't have any specifics.
I think that's true.
We need to fix that.
Yeah. And even what doesn't fit in is rather objective.
It is.
And what can
Design is
happen,
a subjective thing, yeah.
but what could happen is if the DRC changes and you have people who all of a sudden like red, and then they change and you've got a group that all of a sudden likes blue. I mean, you could be changing the style of the town all the time. If we want to get somewhere where we've got some consistency, we have to get specific.
Well,
within a range, it seems.
I personally would like to see some standards set forth that are maybe, I don't want to say too restrictive. They shouldn't be restrictive, but I would kind of like to have some standards that are guidelines to people. I'm not sure how to say this. I'd almost like to have guidelines, not the word, some direction as to what do we want our, I guess the question to start would be, what do we want our town to look like? I mean, I'm not saying that we need to go in here and change the facade of buildings that existing to look like a certain thing, but from today's forward, could we not have a guideline as to, a goal? It's just a question.
I had mentioned to the Planning Commission a meeting or two ago, what I'd really like to see is a committee put together of a couple of Planning Commission members, a couple of DRC, or interested town residents, and come up with a rather wide color palette. So we don't say it's going to be green or it's going to be blue,
Right.
anything but hot pink, but that they've got blues, they've got greens, they've got beige, they've got browns. Whatever our palette is going to look like, what we want it to look like for our mountain. And knowing that most of our commercial areas are already built out, but I mean, it could be like the sign ordinance. If so-and-so percentage of the building facade is going to be updated in any way, then at that point it must conform to the color or whatever. But I'd like to see input from several areas and not just throw it all to the, no offense to the DRC.
No,
but
I would agree, and I
like
think
the
you should
input.
include some members of the Mountain Business Association.
Exactly.
There is no Mountain Business
Well, there
Association.
is none, but some local business owners, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they disbanded that
Yeah.
a while back, yeah.
That sounds like a good
I
idea.
mean, I don't, the DRC has been tagged for years as being anti-business, and we couldn't be further from the truth. We just want the community to continue to, the thing is, what I don't want to see happen on Taft Highway is what I would call highway architecture. You can see examples of that if you drive down Brainerd Road or through East Ridge. That's what I call highway architecture. People are competing. Pigeon Forge is the worst example of it. We're not near that, but people are competing for your attention as you drive down the road. This is a small community. I think businesses can get the attention they need. And again, it's a small community. We all pretty much know what's up here. I would say go to Franklin, Tennessee, if you want to see a really good example of what downtown can be. I don't see why Signal Mountain couldn't go that direction, even though our architecture is not anything like Franklin's.
So in talking to, oh goodness, what's his name with Set D? Not Garrett, but Garrett's immediate supervisor. You know who I'm talking about, you can see his face. Anyway, he has offered, if we want to get a little outside suggestion in, to bring in the planner, I think that might have been who worked with Franklin, Tennessee, to talk about how their town did their charrettes. I'm sensitive to the fact, after having read our charter, that this move to get this done needs to come from the DRC, not from the councils telling the DRC what to do. So I guess that's one of the reasons I wanted this on here. It is the DRC that is supposed to suggest to the council, I think, that we want to maybe look at Franklin and try to get a book and try to get a palette.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how long you've been on the mountain. Years ago, Kennedy, Coulter, Watson, and they did the same very same thing for what was going to be a development behind. I guess it was the one that was
The Coffin Way property.
Yeah.
Yeah. That KCRW study was never officially tied into anything, though. There's a reference to it in the land use plan, but it's.
And I don't want to I don't want to create a town center. I just want guidelines. And again, you haven't asked me for this. This is totally surprising to me that this conversation, I saw it on the agenda and I said, I think I need to be there.
Well, this is the way we start. And
But it is something that's been kind of on my mind for a while, is that I would like to kind of have some guidelines that would produce an image of what we want Signal Mountain Town to look like.
right. Well, and that's why it's on here, so we can have this conversation, because we're not supposed to have it privately with most of these things. And we need to get this going. It needs to be a public conversation and get people's input. So if at the next DRC meeting, can you guys make this a priority, and you can work with Planning Commission?
So you want me to put before the members that we would like to request, I guess, the opportunity to give you input as to new guidelines?
If you look at
I'm trying to figure out how to
If you
word
look
it.
at the charter for the DRC and just read through that, it says that suggestions for, like these, should come from the DRC.
Okay.
You're supposed to suggest stylistically what it's supposed to look like. I could probably find the exact wording, but it's pretty clear that it's should start with
Okay.
you folks to be done right.
Okay.
Yeah. This is a discussion. Any other?
I think it needs to be done too. I'm all in.
Oh, I'm all for it, yeah.
Yeah, I just think it makes it easier. It's the opposite of being anti-business. It's pro-business. It lets people know when they come in so that they're not trying to guess, well, does this DRC board member like this color and this one like that color? Gives them an idea of what the town says it wants. And
But I would like to see the input from Planning Commission as well as citizens and business owners, too.
Right.
We can just set up a little subcommittee and do it that way.
yeah, come to our next planning commission meeting, if you can. All DRC members, it'd be great if we all start working on this together, because it's not, none of us are paid, we're all volunteers, and we all kind of have to work it in when we can.
Well, we can just ask Chuck at the next DRC meeting to put on the agenda as a work
Okay.
session to, I mean, the first meeting might be nothing more than a conversation to let them know what we're looking at, but.
Might invite Jamie from, who's the planning commission chair.
Sir?
Jamie Blanton, you might invite Jamie Blanton
Yeah,
to
okay.
be involved.
Can I contact either or both of you later to get some names of, or does that need to be done here in this council meeting?
We can do that, right? We just can't share the secret handshake.
If Cheryl theoretically is coming off DRC, then that removes any
Well,
inkling of any
True,
issue, so
unless I'm taking Bob's seat there.
he is a liaison as
Correct.
opposed to a member.
Correct.
So you may still be involved. but-
Okay.
Well, you're talking about a couple people from the planning commission, right? And then you're saying some members of the community, some business owners, I guess. You know,
The community part is.
Who would those people be?
Well, I don't think that's the next step.
Okay.
The next step is you guys getting the meta stuff together. It's like, these are the steps we're going to take in order to try to do this, which might be, we see if Franklin, Tennessee has a book that they go by. Take a look at maybe some other communities. Because it's logistically, I agree with you. I mean, a color palette can be awful if it says our color's green. You know, it has to be.
No, I think it needs to be a
Yeah.
wider range than that. If
Right.
you want to leave off hot pink, I'm for that, so that's not a problem.
Yeah, I think Dick G always talked about the reflecting a woodland community.
That's been the statement in there, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But until we say what that is, it's just a statement.
Right, so define it a little more.
But we do have the ability to codify that, though. We can, and people can always ask for variations if somebody's coming in and they're.
Well, that's what happens if they don't like what our direction is. Well, your option is to appeal to the town council.
Right,
I would prefer that we don't have to do that.
right.
I would prefer that they never had to come to you, but that's never going to be the case. There's
Right.
always going to be someone who doesn't like their decision.
Claire, is there anything else you think we're missing in this?
No, I hope it moves along quickly. Really quick.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and even if we move this along quickly, it takes a long time for things to change, you know, as new businesses come in. But we want to be business friendly. I mean, that's the purpose.
Okay.
Yeah, anything else, guys? All right, thank you. Next discussion item is on-premise beer regulations. So, you may think that I don't have a life. I've been reading our charter a lot lately and reading our codes. And when you take a look at our beer ordinance, it is so 1980s. The whole craft beer industry that is kicked up, our beer ordinance, this is ours, not the state's, limits the alcohol content to 5%. There's hardly any craft beers that are 5% or less. So it's one of those things that we can change. So that's what this discussion is about. And along with that, you know, there's been a lot of talk about, you've heard over and over and over, people saying this would be a great town to have a pub in. But the way our beer ordinance is set up, you have to have seating for 50, and you have to serve lunch and dinner. And maybe we don't want to change that, but that's also the kind of thing that, if that is restricting potential businesses from coming into Signal Mountain, maybe we ought to take a look at that and make it easier for businesses to come into Signal Mountain. So how do we start with something like that? I guess Harry and Boyd.
Well, I think the 5% issue is something I don't think we have any choice but to address that. That industry has evolved in that, and our regulations associated with it have not. I don't think anyone ever would intend that only certain types of beer could be sold because some have 6% alcohol. It's just, that's the way all beer was for a very long time, and it's not that way anymore. So I think that was relatively straightforward. Again, the other is a decision for council, perhaps with citizen input, as to whether or not we want to change what I've always seen as a sort of an anti-bar honky-tonk ordinance, that we're not going to just have a bar in the town of Signal Mountain. Again, things have evolved so that there are establishments that focus on beer or other alcoholic beverages that don't fit the mold of your classic bar and the problems that they bring with them. There's always a potential, but you know, that's not as straightforward, but a discussion that I think hasn't been had in many years, and there's no reason not to have that discussion and make a determination.
I've never been involved in a discussion like that. I have no idea where to start. I mean, so this is the start.
Yeah, let's do it.
Any recommendation?
Perhaps each of us can review that, mark it up with our thoughts, and then next meeting,
Yeah.
put it all together.
Yeah, the 5% is just ridiculous. You could change that to 9%. I've talked to a couple of business owners that, you know, who had sold beer in the past and who have now. And one recommendation, which I think is maybe a bit too high, is to treat beer and wine. But wine is like 19%, if I'm not mistaken.
I was thinking it was more like 12, 13 generally, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But that is regulated elsewhere by if you sell wine, you get your permit and licensing through the state.
But our beer restriction to 5% still applies to them, doesn't it?
To beer.
To beer, that's what I'm saying. So
Yes.
if you
Yes.
sell wine, you still can't sell almost any craft beer.
Right.
Based on our ordinance. So that's crazy. And it only takes a minute to figure out who we're talking about because we're such a small town. So I'm for that. So why don't we try at the next meeting to hammer out something so that at the following meeting we could vote on an ordinance? Everybody good with that?
Yep.
That's progress.
And beyond that, I would ask, and this isn't a recommendation or anything, but I think we do need to consider well, we do allow alcohol at the MAC. But given the nature of the operation and how things would naturally happen there, the ordinances really complicate things greatly. Not sure exactly what the answer to that is, but I think requiring someone to have a $250 permit for one event and, you know, treating it as if it's a business at every turn just doesn't make sense. At the time we changed it, you know, that we had what we had and we changed it to try to accommodate and expand the opportunity, but it doesn't work real well. So I think as part of this, we need to address, do we want to broaden the opportunities for if you're having a wedding and you want to have alcohol, is there a mechanism to do that that doesn't involve all of this? Things like that. If you're fundraising for the town's facility, is there a way to do that without the complications?
Or if Val, the art teacher, wants to have a wine and painting class, or if somebody wants to have a culinary class that they serve, where they serve wine, it just, every one of those technically needs to spend $250 every time they do it, and it seems like we ought to fix that.
Yeah.
So that feels more like a legal wording kind of thing, Harry. Do you want us to take a shot at it?
Well, yeah, I think the town council needs to decide what they want to do. What, you know, with your all's recommendations, we can draft something. But I think it's a policy decision initially as to what the council wants to allow or.
Well, can we talk for 5 more minutes? Could we come to an agreement right now that asks our town attorney and town manager to draft something that would make it so that since alcohol is already allowed at the MAC, that as long as, you know, you still have the thing where you have to have a bartender, and that's, I mean, the way it reads right now, you have to have a bartender even if you don't have a bar. Like
So
if you pay $250 and you want to have wine at a wedding right now, you still have to have a bartender there.
And I don't know that's going to be the challenge is, I think the beer side of things is going to be easier because that's all in our basket.
Okay.
The wine will be a little more complicated.
Maybe we stick to beer for now.
Well, I'm not saying that, but we will have to address it as 2 different things. And actually, I would tend to disagree that while we're doing it, let's see if we can fix everything that needs to be fixed, even though it may be a little more complicated.
What do you think?
I mean, have the state regulations changed with regard to wine? I mean, I know they have with, you know, being able to buy wine on Sundays and buy it in grocery stores, so maybe some of the ordinances related to wine have also kind of been modernized.
Well, again, a lot of the complication comes with the fact that we treat everything as if a business is functioning. If you're having an event, you bring a caterer in, then they have to follow certain rules. If we were to allow, just for instance, a teacher who wants to have an art class and allow someone to drink wine, if we allowed that, if they provided us with a certificate of insurance that specifically covered such things and named the town as an also insured, and if that's really all we were concerned with, I don't know that the state of Tennessee would care one way or the other. It's the fact that it's our property and we have to regulate what happens there. If it's restricted to a business such as a caterer providing alcohol at an event, then the state's going to be involved. So again, it boils down to what's our comfort level and what do we want and what do we not want to allow.
Well, I think we should allow the grammar school to be able to have events and have beer and wine there. Like, we need to just figure out what we need to do to make it easy for them to be able to do that, so that's a huge component for them as they try to raise money to enhance the facility. So,
Yeah. It's just,
I mean, to me, it's kind of simple, like, I mean, I'm not trying to make something complicated, I don't want to like say that it's easy, I'm just saying, I think that the long-term objective to me would be, let's figure out a way to make it easier for the MAC to just be able to have beer and wine.
And we've had this discussion in that with an entity that's doing a fundraiser which will benefit the town, the argument is that they're unique in their function. But we also have to be careful of having separate sets of regulations for the Preservation Fund wants to have a concert where you can have a beer versus whatever other.
somebody wants to have a birthday party.
Right.
Individual wants to come in. Do they need to have bartender? Can you treat that differently than a nonprofit that's trying to raise money to put up a dog shelter?
Or the Playhouse would be another
Right.
good.
The light,
Or the
exactly.
library. Yeah.
Exactly.
So those are the things you have to, like you said, if it makes sense that they're doing something to raise money and benefit that facility, and in turn the town, you would want to accommodate that to the best of your ability within reason, but it is somewhat difficult to separate them out. So we want to think about making sure we were comfortable if another organization wanted to do the same thing, we might be in a position to need to allow that as well.
Harry's making notes, and that's a positive sign.
And he hasn't hit me or told me to shut up,
He
so
hasn't seen one of
I
those
think,
yet.
I think we're on the same page.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure, like with the library, because she's got a whole,
Big-
campaign going on.
Big
to-
campaign started.
I mean, y'all
yeah.
need to be able to do that. And it's.
Well, the library is a different facility that doesn't have that option, but the library could use the MAC for fundraisers.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's already changed. So, Harry, did you have?
No, I was trying to, I think Boyd's point is good. Anything which benefits the town is a different animal than, somebody's birthday party or 50th birthday party, whatever. And does the council want to treat those differently? If it's an event that benefits the town, like the library or
I think so,
and I don't know that it can be differentiated. I'll have to look at it, but
I think if
So-
it's a function that is going to raise money in some capacity to enhance a town's property,
Let's say this, it's a nonprofit like MEF, which
Yes.
isn't necessarily doing the town's property, it's doing something for the schools, but that still benefits all of us. I would put that in the same category.
kind of put it in the same basket.
Yeah.
But then if somebody's going to have a 50th birthday party, I don't think it's unreasonable to say,
You have to have a bartender.
you're going to have a bartender. I think $250 is a pretty steep fee to have to do that and have a bartender. I mean, that would probably keep people from using those
Okay,
facilities.
could we have groups that apply, like MEF, library board, not the regular library board, but the Friends of the Library, sports boosters if they wanted to, that could apply for a permit that's specific that allows them to do that. So they show us proof of insurance, and we recognize that they're a nonprofit raising funds to better the community, and have that delineation from a party.
As basically an established organization.
Yeah,
as
Lions
opposed,
Club.
as opposed to an individual.
Nonprofit.
I mean, I think too, since we talk about like fees and things like that as a source of revenue for the town, I mean, I'm not saying you want to charge an exorbitant amount of money, but if people did have a place up here where they could host a party that's like a fun party with beer and wine, to raise money for something, or just because they want to have their daughter's 16th birthday party?
Right.
Or whatever.
And that also benefits the MAC.
It's not underage. No. I'm just, yeah, not that. So 21st or whatever.
21st birthday party.
Yeah. Not 16th. What kind of parties you have? No, I was just thinking, like, I hosted my daughter's 16th birthday party, and we weren't, well, adults.
Yeah, keep
had
going.
beer. But we had it at the club. There was nowhere up here to have a party except at the club, really.
True,
Yeah.
true.
That was,
I
like an
understand.
attractive place to have a party or whatever.
You're making
So-
it worse.
Yeah, I'm not talking about alcohol. I'm just saying from a facilities usage perspective.
Got it,
Yeah.
okay.
But it also, if we did that, that benefits the MAC because you'd have people renting the space, for events and things. So
Sure.
I just think it's getting us moving like we ought to be moving. So have we given you enough to scratch something together?
I think, yeah.
Good.
Yeah. And Boyd and I will talk to.
Okay. All right. The next one is SMEPF proposal for HVAC in the theater. And Angie Landrum, do you want to talk? I mean, I can explain it incorrectly and then get in trouble when I get home, or you can come up and do that.
Angie Landrum, 505 Georgia Avenue. Okay, well, the theater needs a new HVAC system, and it's estimated to cost almost $50,000. It also needs new electrical to support a new system, and that's estimated to be $14,000. So we're up at about $64,000 in expenses for that. We have raised $35,500 so far for that particular project. So what is the difference? 27,000 or something like that. Our question is, we need the HVAC in before we replace the ceiling tiles. Because if we put this new ceiling tiles in now, they will warp because the room is not conditioned.
Are the ceiling tiles part of the HVAC system fundraiser, or is that separate?
No, it's separate.
Okay.
Yeah, the room needs new ceiling tiles and paint and stage curtains and a lot of extra things, but those things will be funded by other donors. So right now, the major fundraising we've been doing is for the HVAC system because that's the biggie and the thing that we need first before we can move forward. So, and we need that done before we put the seats back in the auditorium because right now the room is empty. All the seats are up on the stage. And if we can get this moving now, we have to use scaffolding to put up the ceiling tiles and to change out the lights and all that. So if we can do that while the room is empty, that would be wonderful. So our question is, could we get the town to go ahead and bid out the work and go ahead and pay for it? And we will pay what we have now and continue to raise money to pay the difference over the next year.
So,
And just for the record, the memo that I had and forwarded to council came out, as you'll see, a few weeks ago, and the information and pricing has been updated since then. So it is, as opposed to 18,000, we're at like 28.5.
Mm-hmm. The electrical is much higher than
One
we
other
had hoped.
aspect is we were looking at, is actually just under 50,000 initially, but then once it moved above 50,000, there's also a provision that we would need to get an engineer to design this. We can tell them that we want a conventional system and just get it designed. I don't think it would be a significant cost, but it is a requirement that we do that. If it's over 50,000, and especially if it addresses mechanical and electrical components, which this does both. So just so you know, that would be some additional cost. I don't think it'd be terribly significant.
So speaking to not the anti side of this, but the I know Barb would like to see the seats back today, and I understand that, because they'd like to have the theater. We're so close to getting this thing so that it's good for a long time, you know?
I think we should do it.
Ed Garvey, do you have a question?
She made a comment about putting.
Name and address, Ed. We have short memories.
Name and address again, Ed Garvey, 502 Signal Mountain Boulevard. You made a comment about ceiling tile needing to be put in, and I know Boyd is probably aware of this. The fire marshal will not give a certificate of occupancy if there are damaged or missing ceiling tile anywhere in the building. That's not to say that ones that are in there now can't do the job. I haven't been in there in the last couple of days. I don't know what the auditorium tiles look like.
I think they've looked at them.
Yeah.
The town's already replaced them all, so
We're
it's set.
replacing ones that need to be.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, she
and I
mentioned
think they've
getting
looked
new
at-
ones, so I don't.
They're going to change the color.
Okay.
Yeah, they're going to put
So-
brand new ones in that are black.
Yeah.
So if they're in there for an extended period of time, they could start working. Some was
So
the
the
concern.
plan then is to get the CO, and then we put her new tile in.
Yes.
That would be a great plan.
Yes,
I like
that is the plan. Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah.
I see why you're nervous. Yeah, but, yeah, that is the plan.
Yes, we don't want to slow anything down, so.
Do I have a conflict of interest? Cheryl's been involved. You said you aren't on the board anymore. Do we have any conflict? I don't know why I would have a conflict of interest, but I just want to make sure.
You need to disclose the situation as if it needed it, but disclose.
All of our situation, because it's complicated.
I think you've probably disclosed enough.
Okay.
As much as you need to disclose.
Thank you, Harry. Okay.
So, no.
Yeah, okay. So to move forward on this, can we ask, you haven't drafted anything that the town moves forward on this, but there would need to be some sort of an MOA, I assume, that deals with the SMEPF paying the town back.
Right.
And can we have that by the next meeting so we can vote on it?
I think so. Sure. And we are working on getting a quote for the engineering on the system. Again, we can tell them we want a conventional HVAC system and all of that. It's not that we're asking someone to design, some other type.
Airflow,
It just,
yeah.
this is what we're going to put in, tell us what it needs to be.
Right.
So we're working on getting a quote for that now, and then with that, we can, I think with just direction from the council, we can put a bid packet together and bid it out. And in the meantime, we can work on the MOU that will cover this specifically.
Everybody comfortable with that? Do you need a vote? Carol, you had something.
Well, it would require
Budget.
either a budget amendment or a reconsideration of other projects that are in the budget in facilities maintenance or capital project. We have funds that can be used, but unless you're going to replace another project until such time as the funds are reimbursed.
Are you talking about capital projects specifically from that building?
No, just capital projects fund in general, or facilities maintenance fund. If funds are appropriated for facilities projects, we're not confined to a specific project necessarily, but we have to have funds available, and we do. But if we use those for this, then other funds that are planned for those funds to be used for will be left lacking. So we will have to address it one way or the other. And right now, theoretically, when it's all said and done, even on the front end, if the donation is made to the town of available funds now, then we're talking about $28,000. So basically, the bottom line is it's manageable. We can.
That answer your question?
She just wanted to make me say it.
So, Angie, why don't you tell us, because I know you have lots of different kinds of fundraisers. So, how do you all plan to raise the funds to pay us back?
We just picked up a brochure today that we had printed that we're sending to corporations in Chattanooga that have a relationship with Signal Mountain currently or support the arts. And we'll continue to do our coffee house concerts, events, and talent shows, and whatever else we can think of. So,
All right. Harry, any questions you need to ask?
Do you think it's reasonable to assume that, that your organization can reimburse the funds, like inside the next,
yes.
inside this fiscal
Yes,
year?
I think it'll be less than a year.
So, I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, okay. Is that it? Thank you.
I think we're on to kind of agenda. And we've added a few items already, right?
Yes.
We did not. If we can hold the discussion of boards, committees, and openings until next time.
Okay.
Make that a discussion item. It's not on here. So move that forward. What are we at? Digital. This is where the beer ordinance discussion. We'll vote on, will this be a resolution and a potential budget amendment for the,
We'll have a resolution. I'm trying to go in order of what we did tonight. I apologize for the MAC strategic plan resolution, adopting or accepting that. A resolution authorizing MOU with Signal Mountain Elementary Preservation Fund, HVAC reimbursement of funds, something along those lines. Okay, I apologize. I was in the middle of tracking those things.
yeah, and the budget of whatever we have to do budget-wise, if it goes along with that.
Yeah, we'll do the second reading and hearing on the one we have now, and then we'll bring another one. Like I said, we have funds available, so it's not that pressing, so I think it would be cleaner to move through the one that we did, just resolving issues from the carryover
And we might not
projects.
have all the bids in yet anyway.
Oh, no, we
For
won't.
what it would cost, so.
No, we're close. I'd be surprised if we have it bid out by then.
Okay.
By the time we get the engineering and the bid specs done and everything, so that won't be pressing.
Anybody have anything else?
And then you'll have the James Boulevard Thomas Brothers
that's right.
construction that you tabled.
So the questions that I have on that, I'd like to know what are our options? If we ask somebody to pour pavement out here and we don't like the job, what are our options? And it's kind of that simple, except this is $1 million.
And I think that one of the things, we do have a performance bond in place, and the question will be, can we establish that they have not fully performed and provided the product? And if the contract doesn't have the language that Jamie provided in this, and that was the initial response from the engineers, that those are TDOT specs because you're talking about freeways and bridges and things like that, and generally those aren't included and don't apply to low-speed residential roads. But does that mean that there's not some mechanism to establish whether a finish is acceptable or not?
Yeah.
And that's what he's researching now.
Yeah, if we contracted with Aztec to do a mile of asphalt, and it was a roller, you know, it was like this, it's the same thing,
Right.
right? All right. Anybody else have, Boyd, do you have anything for other business?
No, sir.
We're going in a private session in just a minute.
Yes, we do. Legal session after the meeting.
Anybody else? We're adjourned.
According to this,